The four foods I'm about to reveal today all have something surprising in common. Over the years, I noticed that nearly every patient who came to me with worsening kidney function was regularly eating at least one of these foods. It wasn't because they were making poor choices or ignoring their health. The real issue was that nobody had explained an important truth. Once you pass 60, your body's nutritional needs begin to change, and your kidneys no longer respond to certain foods the same way they did before. Welcome to Wellness Science Hub. I'm Dr. William Lee, a kidney specialist, and I've spent more than 2 decades caring for people with kidney disease. During that time, I've seen countless active, health-conscious adults unexpectedly move closer to dialysis, not because they neglected themselves, but because they were following advice that simply wasn't appropriate for aging kidneys. The foods responsible weren't unusual or obviously unhealthy. In fact, they were common items sitting in their kitchens every day. They were foods people intentionally bought because they believed they were making smart, healthy decisions. In a moment, I'll walk you through all 4 of these foods and explain why they can become a problem. But before we get to that list, it's important to understand why kidneys over the age of 60 react differently. Without understanding the reason behind it, it's easy to forget the advice. I want you to remember this because it could make a real difference for you or someone you care about. If you're over 60, or you have a parent, spouse, or loved one in that age group, keep watching. And before we continue, leave a comment telling me your age and whether you've ever had your kidney function checked. Simply write your age, followed by yes or no. It helps put today's information into perspective. Let me share the story of Ruth. Ruth was 71 years old when she first visited my clinic. She had recently retired after many years as a school teacher in Ohio. She was intelligent, disciplined, and took excellent care of herself. She enjoyed a morning walk every day, never missed her prescribed medications, and had never been a smoker. From every outward sign, she was doing exactly what most doctors recommend. During her yearly checkup, routine blood work showed that her creatinine level was slightly higher than expected. Her physician ordered another test to measure her estimated glomerular filtration rate, or eGFR, which tells us how efficiently the kidneys are filtering waste from the blood. An eGFR above 60 is generally considered healthy. Ruth's result came back at 52. Her doctor advised her to pay closer attention to her diet and scheduled another appointment 6 months later. Like many responsible people, Ruth immediately started researching ways to improve her health. She replaced white bread with whole wheat bread, began eating bran cereal every morning, added bananas and avocados to her meals because she'd read they were excellent sources of potassium and believed potassium was beneficial for blood pressure. For lunch, she often chose canned tomato soup, and during her daily walks, she drank sports beverages to replace electrolytes. Everything she did was based on advice she genuinely believed was helping her. Unfortunately, 6 months later, her follow-up test showed something alarming. Her eGFR had fallen from 52 to 38. In only half a year, her chronic kidney disease had progressed from stage 3A to stage 3B. That's when her doctor referred her to me. When Ruth handed me her food journal, I carefully reviewed every page. What stood out immediately was that none of her choices looked reckless. Quite the opposite. They reflected someone making thoughtful, informed decisions in an honest effort to stay healthy. I looked at Ruth and said, "Everything you're eating is considered healthy." She looked confused. "Then why are my kidneys getting worse?" she asked. "Because your kidneys aren't functioning like they used to," I explained. For someone with completely healthy kidneys, many of these foods are perfectly appropriate. But once kidney function has already declined, even nutritious foods can place extra strain on an organ that's no longer able to process certain minerals and nutrients efficiently. That's the part most people never hear. As kidney function decreases, the dietary rules change. Foods that support heart health in a healthy adult may become difficult for weakened kidneys to handle. Continuing to eat them without adjusting your diet can quietly accelerate further damage. Over the following year, we made targeted changes to Ruth's eating habits based on what her kidneys could safely manage. The good news was that her kidney function stabilized. Her eGFR improved slightly and remained around 41. While the damage that had already occurred couldn't be reversed, the decline finally stopped. Most importantly, she avoided dialysis and has continued living independently, preparing her own meals and enjoying her daily routine. So what was happening inside Ruth's kidneys during all of this? This is the part many people don't learn until kidney disease has already become part of their lives. Beginning around the age of 40, kidney function naturally starts to decline by about 1% each year. According to data from the National Kidney Foundation, by the time many people reach their 70s, they may have already lost between 25% and 30% of their kidney function without realizing it. There may be no pain, no swelling, and no obvious warning signs. The only clue is often a number on a routine lab report that slowly moves in the wrong direction over the years. As kidney function declines, your body no longer processes nutrients the same way it once did. That is where many well-intentioned food choices can become a hidden problem. One of the biggest concerns is phosphorus. Healthy kidneys remove excess phosphorus from the bloodstream, but when kidney function drops, they struggle to keep up. As phosphorus builds up, it can lead to a condition known as hyperphosphatemia. Studies have shown that elevated phosphorus levels are linked to faster kidney damage as well as injury to blood vessels. The greatest concern isn't the phosphorus that naturally occurs in foods, it's the inorganic phosphorus added to processed products to extend shelf life and improve texture. Your body absorbs nearly all of this added phosphorus, around 90 to almost 100%, while only about 40 to 60% of naturally occurring phosphorus is absorbed. That's an enormous difference, yet these additives usually aren't listed in a way that's easy to recognize on nutrition labels. Potassium is another important issue. Healthy kidneys constantly regulate potassium levels to keep them within a narrow, safe range. But when kidney function is reduced, excess potassium isn't removed efficiently. Over time, it can build up in the bloodstream and interfere with the heart's normal rhythm, increasing the risk of dangerous irregular heartbeats. Ironically, many foods promoted as excellent choices for heart health, especially for older adults, are also among the richest sources of potassium. Foods like bananas, avocados, and oranges are often encouraged, yet they may not be appropriate for someone whose kidneys are no longer filtering properly. Protein is another area where the advice changes. Eating protein causes the kidneys to work harder because they must process the waste products created during protein metabolism. Healthy kidneys can usually manage this increased workload without difficulty. However, kidneys that are already damaged respond differently. This extra demand leads to a process called glomerular hyperfiltration, where the kidney's filtering units are forced to work beyond their normal capacity. Over time, repeated stress like this can speed up the loss of kidney function. Research has consistently found that people with existing kidney disease may experience faster progression when consuming excessive amounts of protein. This is especially important because many older adults are encouraged to increase protein intake to help preserve muscle mass. While that advice is often appropriate, it doesn't necessarily apply once kidney function falls below an eGFR of 60. At that point, nutrition recommendations often need to be adjusted to match the kidney's reduced capacity. Sodium creates another major challenge. As kidney function declines, removing excess sodium becomes much more difficult. Sodium stays in the body, causing fluid retention, increasing blood pressure, and placing even more stress on already weakened kidneys. Higher blood pressure then causes additional kidney damage, creating a cycle that feeds itself over time. Health experts, including the CDC, have repeatedly identified excessive sodium intake as one of the major dietary factors that contributes to the progression of chronic kidney disease. I'd like you to answer a quick question in the comments. Have you ever been told to watch your diet because of your kidneys? And if so, were you actually given a detailed explanation of which foods to limit, or were you simply told to be careful without any real guidance? Leave a comment saying either yes, I received specific guidance, or I was told to watch my diet, but nobody explained what that meant. In my experience, that gap in understanding is where many preventable problems begin. Let me introduce you to 4 more patients whose experiences highlight exactly how this happens. Frank was 68 years old, a retired firefighter from Texas who was still remarkably active and strong. His physician encouraged him to increase his protein intake to help maintain muscle as he aged. Frank took that advice seriously. He started drinking protein shakes every day, filled his meals with chicken breast, and relied on protein bars whenever he needed a quick snack. The advice itself wasn't wrong. The problem was that Frank's EGFR had quietly remained around 54 for the previous 2 years. His kidneys were already functioning below normal, which meant the standard high protein recommendation was no longer the best fit for his situation. Over the next 14 months, his kidney function declined from an EGFR of 54 to 41, representing an entire stage of chronic kidney disease progression. When Frank asked me, how was I supposed to know the rules were different for me? My answer was simple. You weren't. That's exactly why conversations like this are so important. Then there was Helen, a 74-year-old grandmother from Florida. After her husband suffered a heart attack, she became deeply committed to protecting her own heart. Every day she ate avocado, added spinach to many of her meals, and even started taking potassium supplements after reading about their benefits online. Her medical records clearly showed she already had stage 3 chronic kidney disease, but during brief appointments focused mainly on cholesterol and blood pressure, nobody discussed how those dietary choices might affect her kidneys. One morning, she woke up feeling extremely weak and dizzy while her heart raced uncontrollably. At the emergency room, her potassium level measured 6.4 milliequivalents per liter, a dangerously high level capable of disrupting the heart's electrical system. Fortunately, the medical team treated her quickly and stabilized her condition. When I later reviewed her case, the explanation became obvious. Her kidneys could no longer remove the large amount of potassium she had been consuming every day. She looked at me and quietly said, I thought I was helping my heart. I never imagined I was putting my kidneys at risk. Walter's story was different. At 79 years old, this Korean War veteran from Virginia was recovering from cancer treatment. During chemotherapy, the priority was simply helping him maintain enough calories to keep his strength up. On difficult days, he relied heavily on canned soups, sports drinks, and convenient packaged meals because they were easy to prepare and easier to eat. Unfortunately, no one pointed out that his EGFR had already fallen to 48. By the time his cancer treatment ended, his kidney function had dropped to 29, placing him in stage 4 chronic kidney disease. The high sodium levels and phosphate additives found in many processed foods had gradually added to the burden on his kidneys month after month. Some canned soups contained between 800 and 1,200 milligrams of sodium in a single serving, close to half of what many kidney patients should consume in an entire day. Walter often told me he wished someone had explained those risks before they became a long-term problem. Finally, there was Linda, a 65-year-old woman from Minnesota who had recently been diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. Her healthcare team handled her diabetes exactly as they should have. She was referred to an experienced nutritionist who created a carefully planned meal program based on current evidence. The plan emphasized whole grains, fiber-rich foods, potassium-rich vegetables, and lean sources of protein. The missing piece was that Linda's EGFR was already 55, and that information had never been factored into her meal plan. Several of the foods she had been encouraged to eat every day, including whole wheat bread, lentils, and bananas, were exactly the kinds of foods I would have advised her to significantly reduce because of her declining kidney function. That meal plan was an excellent choice for someone managing diabetes with healthy kidneys. But for a person whose kidney function had already begun to decline, some of those same foods created an entirely different set of challenges. This wasn't a case of bad medical advice. It was simply the reality of treating multiple health conditions at once. Different specialists often focus on different parts of the body, and sometimes important details don't get connected. Now let's talk about the 4 foods I encourage many of my older patients with reduced kidney function to be especially careful with. The first is processed and deli meats. This includes sliced deli turkey, ham, salami, hot dogs, packaged sausages, bacon, and other cured meats. These foods create 2 major problems for aging kidneys. First, they're loaded with sodium. Second, they commonly contain phosphate additives. A small 2-ounce serving of deli turkey can easily contain between 500 and 600 milligrams of sodium. On top of that, many processed meats contain ingredients such as sodium phosphate, phosphoric acid, or similar phosphate compounds. These forms of phosphorus are absorbed by the body almost completely, placing a much greater burden on kidneys that are already struggling. The second food category surprises almost everyone. It's certain high-potassium fruits. Let me be very clear, fruit is not unhealthy. In fact, it's an important part of a balanced diet for many people. The issue is that once kidney function falls below an EGFR of 60, Some fruits provide more potassium than compromised kidneys can comfortably remove. Bananas, oranges, kiwi, and avocados are all excellent foods for people with healthy kidneys. However, for someone with chronic kidney disease, regularly eating large amounts of these fruits can contribute to potassium levels becoming dangerously high. That doesn't mean you have to stop eating fruit altogether. Instead, choose fruits that naturally contain less potassium. Apples, blueberries, strawberries, grapes, and similar options are generally much easier for compromised kidneys to manage while still providing plenty of nutrition. The third food often catches people completely off guard: whole wheat bread and bran-based cereals. For years, we've been encouraged to choose whole grains over refined grains, and for most healthy adults, that's still excellent advice.